The night hung heavy over Umwezi, a small village cradled in the undulating hills of Anambra State, Nigeria, where the air was thick with the scent of earth and the faint tang of rain yet to fall. Baobab trees stood like ancient guardians across the landscape, their gnarled branches clawing at the starless sky, casting shadows that danced in the flickering glow of kerosene lanterns. Adaeze Nwankwo lay on her mat in the family's mud brick compound, her wrapper twisted around her legs, her breath shallow as sleep pulled her into its depths. In her dream, the world was a haze of orange and black, the horizon swallowed by the silhouette of a massive baobab tree. Beneath it stood a woman, her white wrapper billowing as if caught in a wind Adaeze couldn't feel. Her eyes burned like twin coals, piercing through the darkness, and her voice slithered into Adaeze's mind, cold and unyielding. The debt must be paid, child of the thief. The woman's face sharpened high cheekbones, a stern mouth familiar yet elusive, like a memory half forgotten. She reached out, her fingers long and skeletal, and Adaeze's chest tightened as a scream not her own ripped through the night. She jolted awake, sweat beading on her forehead, her wrapper clinging to her skin like a second shadow. The lantern in the corner sputtered, casting jagged shapes across the mud walls. Outside, the wind hissed through the baobab trees, carrying a faint, mournful wail from the village square. Adaeze's heart thudded, her ears straining to catch the sound again. It wasn't just the dream, something real had stirred the night. Adaeze, her younger brother Chidi, stirred on his mat across the room, his voice thick with sleep but laced with unease. At 16, he was slight but wiry, his quiet demeanor hiding a mind that noticed everything. He rubbed his eyes, sitting up. "Did you hear that scream?" She nodded, her throat dry as dust. It came from the square. Barefoot, she padded to the window, her fingers trembling as she pried open a crack in the wooden shutter. Moonlight spilled over the village, bathing the dusty paths and thatched roofs in a silver glow. In the center of the square, the ancient baobab tree loomed, its twisted branches stark against the sky. Beneath it, a shadow flickered too swift, too purposeful before melting into the darkness. A chill crawled up Adaeze's spine, and she stepped back, her breath catching. The next morning, the village awoke to chaos. Namdiok, a fisherman whose booming laugh once filled the market, had been found dead beneath the baobab tree. His body lay sprawled on the red earth, his eyes wide and unseeing, his face twisted in a mask of terror that sent women clutching their wrappers and men muttering prayers. It was the third death in a month. First Mama UCHE, the palm wine tapper, then young Kinang, the goat herder, and now a Namdi, all found at the same spot, all with that same frozen expression. The elders gathered in the square, their voices low as they blamed malaria, but the women pounding yam in their mortars whispered a different truth. Agwu, the goddess of justice, was stirring. Adaeze sat on a wooden stool outside the compound, her needle darting through a piece of vibrant Ankara fabric, stitching a dress for the Egwu festival tomorrow. At 24, she was a seamstress with deft hands and a sharper mind, her fiery spirit tempered by a quiet strength. Her fingers moved with precision, but her thoughts were tangled in the dreams that had plagued her for weeks, each night more vivid, each warning more urgent. She glanced at the baobab in the square, its bark scarred by time, its presence a silent witness to Umwezi's joys and sorrows. Legend said it housed Agwu's spirit, a protector who blessed the village with fertile soil and clear rivers, yet a judge who struck down those who defied her laws. Adaeze, come inside and help with the fufu, her mother, Ngozi, called from the doorway. Ngozi emerged, a plump woman with a warm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes today. Her wrapper was tied tightly around her waist, stained with palm oil from the kitchen, and her headscarf sat slightly askew. She carried a wooden spoon, gesturing toward the house. "The sun's too hot, and we've much to do before the festival." "Coming, Mama," Adaya said, gathering her sewing materials into a woven basket. The Egu festival was a time of harvest and ancestors, when the men donned raffia masks to dance as spirits, and the women sang songs of gratitude. But this year, the deaths had soured the air, and the whispers of Ma-Agu's wrath grew louder with each passing day. Inside, the compound smelled of smoked fish and the earthy richness of egusi soup simmering on a kerosene stove. Chidi sat cross-legged on a mat, carving a wooden flute with a small knife, his brow furrowed in concentration. Their father, Obi Nwankwo, lounged in a faded plastic chair, sipping palm wine from a calabash. Tall and broad-shouldered, with a scar slashing across his left cheek, a relic of a brawl in his youth, Obi was a commanding figure. He owned the village's only palm oil mill, a machine of rusted metal and relentless noise that had lifted the Nwankwo family from poverty to prominence. But his wealth came with Shadow's rumors that he'd struck a deal with forces beyond the sunlit world, whispers that followed him like flies to ripe fruit. "Papa," Adaya said, setting her basket by the door, "what do you think about Nnamdi's death? The women say it's Ma-Agwu, not malaria." Obi's hand froze mid-sip, a drop of palm wine trembling on the calabash's rim before spilling onto the table. His eyes narrowed, but his voice was firm, cutting through the room like a blade. "Nonsense, Adayas. Malaria took him, same as the others. Don't let idle talk fill your head." Ngozi clicked her tongue, stirring the soup with a vigor that betrayed her unease. "Obi, don't be so quick to dismiss the gods. My grandmother swore Ma-Agu sees everything, every secret, every sin. If someone's angered her, no one has angered her." Obi snapped, slamming the calabash down with a force that made the table shudder. Chidi flinched, his knife slipping slightly, and Adaya's stomach knotted. Her father's temper had grown jagged lately, a storm brewing beneath his skin, unpredictable as the dry winds of the harmattan. But in his outburst, she caught a flicker in his eyes, not just anger, but fear, raw and unguarded. The room fell silent, save for the stove's crackle and the distant thump of festival drums warming up in the square. Adayes exchanged a glance with Chidi, who shook his head subtly, a silent plea to let it go. But she couldn't. The dreams, the deaths, her father's fear, they were threads in a tapestry she needed to unravel. She turned to her mother, voice softer now. "Mama, have you seen anything strange at the shrine lately?" "Anything at all?" Ngozi paused, her spoon hovering over the pot, steam curling around her face. I've stayed away since Mama Uche died. The air there feels wrong. Adaye's cold, even in the heat. But I heard Mama Nkechi say she saw something last week, a shadow under the baobab, moving without a body to cast it. Obi scoffed, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the calabash. "Superstition," he muttered, his voice a growl. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the dirt floor. "I'm going to bed. Tomorrow's a big day, and I won't have this foolishness ruin it." He stormed into his room, the door slamming shut behind him. Adayes felt a shiver despite the warmth, her father's dismissal ringing hollow like a drum with no heart. She turned to Chidi, lowering her voice to a whisper. "Have you noticed Papa acting strange lately? Stranger than usual?" Chidi nodded slowly, setting his carving knife down with care. "Last night I couldn't sleep, so I went to fetch water. I saw him at the mill long after dark. He was alone, pacing, muttering to himself. I thought he was drunk at first, but then I heard him. He was praying at Adayes, but not to God. He kept saying, 'I tried to give it back, but you wouldn't let me. Please leave me be.'" Adayes' brow furrowed, her pulse quickening. "Give what back? To who?" "I don't know," Chidi whispered, glancing toward their father's door as if expecting him to burst out. But it didn't sound like a prayer. It sounded like he was pleading with something that scared him. That night, the dream returned, sharper and more suffocating than ever. The woman beneath the baobab stepped closer, her white wrapper trailing like smoke, her burning eyes locking onto Adaez's. The debt must be paid. Child of the thief, she hissed, her voice weaving through the air like a serpent. The baobab's branches twisted above her, alive and reaching, and the ground beneath Adaez's feet trembled. She woke, gasping, her wrapper soaked, the lantern's flame dancing wildly as if caught in a gust. Chidi was awake too, his eyes wide with fear, his flute clutched in his hands like a talisman. "Did you hear it?" he whispered, pointing to the window. A voice outside. Adaez's skin prickled as she crept to the shutter, her bare feet silent on the cool dirt floor. She peered through the crack, her breath hitching. Beneath the baobab in the square, a figure stood, a woman in a white wrapper, her face shrouded in shadow, her presence radiating a cold that seeped through the walls. She turned, and even from this distance, Adaez felt the weight of those ember-like eyes boring into her soul. A gust of wind rattled the leaves, carrying a faint, chilling whisper, "Justice comes, and it will not wait." "It's her!" Adaez breathed, stepping back, her hands trembling. "The woman from my dreams." Chidi joined her, his voice quavering. "Adaez, what's happening?" "Who is she?" "I don't know yet," Adaez said, her mind racing, piecing together the fragments: her father's fear, the deaths, the goddess's voice. "But I think she's Ma-Agwu, and she's trying to tell me something Papa's hiding." The morning broke with a heat that pressed down on Umuez like a heavy hand, the sky a relentless blue above the rolling hills. Adaez sat outside again, her needle moving slower now, her thoughts a storm of questions. The village hummed with life as the Egwu festival drew near. Women carried baskets of yams to the square, their voices rising in song, while men tested the weight of their masquerade costumes, the raffia rustling like dry grass. Children chased each other with palm fronds, their laughter a fleeting balm against the growing dread. Adaez's eyes drifted to the baobab, its shadow stretching long and dark across the square. She remembered the stories her grandmother once told, tales of Uma-Agwu's justice, how she'd struck down a thief who stole from the harvest with a bolt of lightning, how she'd blessed a barren woman with twins after a humble offering. But the stories also warned of her wrath, a force that spared no one who crossed her. 3 deaths, all beneath that tree. Was it coincidence or a sign? Ngozi emerged from the house again, wiping her hands on her wrapper, her face etched with lines of worry that hadn't been there a month ago. "Adaez, you've been out here too long. Come eat your soup's getting cold." Adaez forced a smile, rising with her sewing basket. "I'm coming, Mama." "Just thinking about Namdi?" Ngozi asked, her voice softening as she followed Adaez inside. "It's a terrible thing. His wife hasn't stopped weeping. I saw her this morning clutching his fishing net like it could bring him back." "It's not just in Namdi," Adaez said, setting her basket down. "It's all of them. Mama UCHE, Kine, now him. All at the baobab." "Mama, do you really think it's malaria?" Ngozi hesitated, her eyes darting to the window as if expecting to see the goddess herself. "I don't know, Adaez. The elders say so, but my grandmother always said Mama Agwu's hand is in everything that happens under that tree. When I was a girl, a man died there struck by lightning after he cheated the market women. People said it was her doing." Adaez's chest tightened, the dream's words echoing, "Child of the thief." She glanced at Chidi, who'd resumed carving, his knife moving with a nervous rhythm. "Chidi, what else did Papa say at the mill?" "Anything?" Chidi looked up, his hand stilling. "Not much. Just that. I tried to give it back, but he was shaking Adaez. I've never seen him like that. And there was something else." He kept looking at the ground, like he expected it to open up. Adaez's mind churned. Her father's wealth, his fear, The deaths had all pointed to a secret buried deep, one she had to unearth before the festival turned celebration into mourning. "I'm going to the shrine," she said, her voice firm. "Mama Nkechi will know more. I need to understand what's happening." Ngozi's eyes widened, her hand reaching out. "Adaez, be careful. The shrine's not a place for questions. It's a place for offerings. If Ma Agu's angry, I'll be fine, Mama," Adaez said, though her stomach twisted with doubt. "I have to do this." She stepped outside, the heat wrapping around her like a cloak, the baobab's shadow beckoning her forward. The sun climbed higher over Umwezi, its heat pressing down on the village like a blacksmith's forge, turning the dusty paths into shimmering ribbons of haze. Adaez wove through the bustle of festival preparations, her wrapper brushing against women balancing baskets of yams on their heads, their voices rising in a call and response song that echoed off the hills. Men hauled logs to the square, their laughter mingling with the rhythmic thud of axes, while children darted past, their bare feet kicking up clouds of red earth as they waved palm fronds like banners. The Egwu festival was hours away, yet the air thrummed with a tension that no song could mask. The shadow of death lingered, as palpable as the baobab's sprawling branches. Adaez's steps quickened as she approached the shrine of Ma Agwu, a sacred clearing at the foot of the ancient tree. The baobab towered above, its trunk wide enough to shelter a dozen men, its bark etched with scars from generations. Past, some said, from lightning, others from the goddess's own hand. The clearing was ringed by stones painted red and white, their colors faded by rain and time, and the ground was littered with offerings. Kola nuts split open, their white flesh stark against the earth. Calabashes of palm wine tipped over, their contents staining the soil. Feathers from a sacrificed hen fluttering in the breeze. The air here was cooler, heavier, as if the tree itself exhaled a warning. Mama Nkechi knelt before the shrine, her frail frame draped in a faded wrapper, her gnarled hands clutching a string of cowrie shells that clinked softly as she muttered prayers. The village's oldest healer, she was a living archive of Umwezi's history, her eyes sharp despite the weight of nearly 80 years. Her head was bare, her gray hair cropped close, and a faint scar ran across her temple, a mark she'd once told Adaez from a childhood fall that had gifted her visions of the spirits. Adaez approached cautiously, her sandals crunching on the dry leaves, and knelt beside her, the mask from her dream flashing in her mind. "Mama Nkechi," she said, her voice low, respectful, "I need your help. Something's wrong in Umwezi, and I think you know what it is." Mama Nkechi's eyes snapped open, dark and piercing, cutting through Adaez like a blade through cloth. She studied her for a long moment, the cowrie shell stilling in her hands, then nodded slowly. "Adaez Nwankwo, I saw you coming in the shells this morning. Ma Agwu has been calling you, hasn't she? In your dreams?" Adaez's breath hitched, her skin prickling as if the goddess herself were listening. "Yes." For weeks now, a woman with burning eyes, standing under the baobab. "She calls me child of the thief and says a debt must be paid. Last night I saw her out there." She gestured toward the tree, her hand trembling slightly. "And then, Namdi died. It's no coincidence, is it?" Mama Nkechi's lips pressed into a thin line, her gaze drifting to the baobab as if seeing beyond its bark. "No, child, it's no coincidence. Ma Agwu is awake, and she is angry. A great wrong was done to her, and her justice is stirring. The deaths are her handiwork warnings to the one who offended her." "What wrong?" Adaez asked, her throat tightening as Chidi's words echoed in her mind. "I tried to give it back. What did someone do?" Mama Nkechi leaned closer, her voice dropping to a rasp that barely rose above the rustling leaves. 40 years ago, a sacred artifact was stolen from this shrine, a bronze mask, blessed by Mama Agwu herself. It was forged by the first smiths of Umwezi, imbued with her power to protect the village, to bring prosperity and peace to those who honored her. But the thief took it, twisted its blessing for his own greed, and the goddess cursed him. She's been patient, waiting for him to repent, but his silence has worn thin. Now her wrath spills over, claiming lives until the mask is returned. Edia's heart pounded, a cold sweat breaking across her brow. Who took it, Mama Nkechi? Who's the thief? The old woman hesitated, her fingers tightening around the cowrie shells until they bit into her skin. She glanced around as if the trees themselves might betray her, then whispered, "It was a young man from this village, a man who rose from nothing to become the wealthiest among us. Obi Nwankwo, your father." The name struck Edia's like a thunderclap, reverberating through her chest. She stumbled back, the earth tilting beneath her knees, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "Papa? No, that can't be true. He wouldn't." "He did," Mama Nkechi said, her voice firm but heavy with sorrow. "I was there at Aya's, a young woman then, tending the shrine with my mother. I saw him that night, Obi, barely 20, creeping through the shadows. He was poor, desperate, his father dead, his mother wasting away. He took the mask and ran. The next day, his luck turned. A trader bought his palm oil for a fortune, and from there, he built everything you see. But the mask's power comes with a price. Ma'agwu let him prosper, waiting for him to return it, but he didn't. Years later, I saw him again here, at the shrine, the mask in his hands, trembling like a leaf in a storm. He tried to give it back, but the ground shook, shadows rose, and he fled. The goddess spared him then, but her patience is gone now." Adaya's mind reeled, fragments snapping into place her father's wealth, his fear, the plea Chidi overheard. He said, "He tried to give it back," she murmured, more to herself than to Mama Nkechi. "At the mill, he was begging something to leave him be." Mama Nkechi nodded gravely. "He knows the cursed child. He's felt her eyes on him all these years. But he's buried the truth, and now it's unearthing itself. If the mask isn't returned, the deaths won't stop. Your family, this village, will all pay for his sin." Edia's stomach churned, dread and determination warring within her. Where is it now? Does he still have it? Only Obi knows, Mama Nkechi said, her eyes narrowing. "But you must be careful. Others seek the mask's power. Chief Okoye has long suspected Obi holds it. He's a man of greed, with hands stained by darker deeds than your father's. If he learns you're searching, he'll come for you and he won't hesitate to spill blood." Edia swallowed hard, the name Okoye conjuring images of a hulking figure in gold-threaded agbada, his compound sprawling at the village's edge, guarded by men with hard eyes and hidden blades. She'd heard the whispers: smuggling, extortion, even juju, but never thought they'd tangle with her family. "Thank you, Mama Nkechi," she said, rising on unsteady legs. "I'll find it. I have to." Mama Nkechi grasped her wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. "Be swift, Adaes. Maagwu's justice waits for no one. And take this." She pressed a single cowrie shell into Adias's palm, its surface worn smooth. "A token. It may guide you when the shadows grow thick." Adias nodded, tucking the shell into her wrapper, and turned back toward the compound, the festival's drums pounding in her ears like a heartbeat racing toward doom. Inside the mud brick house, the air was thick with the aroma of palm oil and the faint bitterness of burning kerosene. Ngozi knelt by the stove, wrapping fufu in banana leaves with hands that moved from muscle memory, though her eyes were red-rimmed, her smile absent. Chidi sat nearby, polishing his flute with a rag, his brow furrowed as he watched. Adaes burst through the door, her face a storm of emotion. "Adaes, what's wrong?" Ngozi asked, setting the fufu aside and rising, her wrapper rustling. "You look like you've seen a spirit." "Maybe I have," Adaes said, her voice trembling as she paced the small room. "Mama, I spoke to Mama Nkechi at the shrine. She says Papa stole a sacred mask from Mama Agu 40 years ago, a bronze mask that brought him his wealth. That's why people are dying. The goddess is angry, and we need to return it." Ngozi's hands froze, her face draining of color as if the blood had fled her veins. "What are you saying, Adayes? Your father would never do such a thing. He's a good man. He built this family from nothing." "He did, Mama." Adayes cut in, her voice rising, sharp with urgency. Mama Nkechi saw him take it. She saw him try to return it years later, but something stopped him. "Shadows," she said. Chidi heard him at the mill, praying, begging something to leave him alone. "He knows, Mama. He's known all along." Chidi stood, his flute clattering to the mat, his eyes wide with realization. That's what he meant. I tried to give it back. He was talking to her, Mama Agwu. He's got the mask, Adayes. He's hiding it. Ngozi shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks as she sank onto a stool, her hands trembling in her lap. No, this can't be true. Obi wouldn't. He couldn't. Her voice broke, and she pressed a hand to her mouth, stifling a sob. If this is real, if he did this, then we're all in danger. Maago doesn't forgive easily. My grandmother told me stories of whole families struck down for less. Adayes crossed to her mother, kneeling before her and taking her hands. "Mama, we can fix this. We need to find the mask and take it back to the shrine. Where's Papa now?" Ngozi wiped her eyes, her voice barely a whisper. "He's at the festival leading the palm wine offering with the elders. He left an hour ago, said it was his duty as the mill owner. I'm going to confront him," Adayes said, standing, her resolve hardening like iron in a forge. She turned to Chidi. "Come with me. We need to do this together." Chidi nodded, grabbing his sandals from the corner, his face pale but determined. "I'm with you, Adayes. Let's make him tell the truth." Ngozi reached out, her voice desperate. "Be careful, both of you. If Obi's kept this secret so long, he won't give it up easily. And if Ma Agu's watching, we'll be fine, Mama," Adayes said, though her heart thudded with doubt. She squeezed Ngozi's hand, then stepped outside, Chidi at her side, the festival's drums calling them into the fray. The village square was a riot of color and sound, transformed for the Egwu festival into a living tapestry of tradition. Women swayed in bright wrappers, their headscarves glinting with beads, their voices weaving songs of harvest and hope. Men in embroidered agbada stood in clusters, sipping palm wine and debating the day's events, while the masquerades men cloaked in raffia skirts and wooden masks, painted with fierce eyes, twirled and leaped to the frenetic beat of drums. The air smelled of roasted yam and the sweet tang of fermenting palm wine, but beneath it all lingered a tension, a murmur of unease about the deaths that no dance could dispel. Obi stood at the center of the elders' circle, a towering figure in a deep blue agbada, pouring palm wine from a calabash into a shallow clay bowl as an offering to the ancestors. His movements were deliberate, his face a mask of calm authority, but Adayes saw the strain in his shoulders, the way his eyes flicked to the baobab tree, as if expecting it to strike. Around him, the elders nodded approval, gray-haired men with staffs of carved wood, their voices low as they blessed the harvest. "Papa!" Adayes shouted, pushing through the crowd, her voice cutting through the drums like a blade. The rhythm faltered, the drummers pausing mid-beat, and the elders turned, their faces hardening with disapproval. A woman interrupting the offering was taboo, a breach of custom that drew gasps from the onlookers. Chidi followed close behind, his fists clenched, ready to back her up. Obi's head snapped up, his scar twitching as his eyes narrowed. "Adayes, what is this madness? You're embarrassing me in front of the village." "I don't care," Adayes said, her voice ringing over the murmurs, her heart pounding but her stance unyielding. "I spoke to Mama Nkechi. She told me about the mask, the bronze mask you stole from Uma Agu's shrine 40 years ago. Is it true?" A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, the masquerades freezing mid-step, their raffia skirts rustling in the sudden silence. The elders exchanged uneasy glances, their staffs tapping the ground nervously. From the edge of the square, a hulking figure watched Chief Okoye, his gold-threaded agbada catching the sunlight, his broad face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. His eyes, dark and calculating, locked onto Adaez, a faint smile curling his lips as he leaned closer to one of his men, whispering something that made the man nod and slip away into the throng. Obi's face darkened, his jaw clenching as he stepped toward her, his voice a low growl. "Who's filling your head with such lies? Mama Nkechi is an old woman who sees spirits in every breeze. Go home, Adaez. This isn't your place. It is my place." Adaez shouted, her voice trembling with anger and fear. "3 people are dead. Papa, Mama, UCHE, Kini, Namdi, all under that tree. I've seen her Mama Agu in my dreams, calling me child of the thief. She wants the mask back. If you know where it is, you need to tell me now." Obi grabbed her arm, his grip bruising as he yanked her away from the circle, dragging her toward a cluster of palm trees at the square's edge. Chidi followed, his eyes darting between his father and the crowd, his body tense as if ready to intervene. Obi released Adaez with a shove, his voice a hiss that barely masked his panic. "You will not speak of this again. Do you hear me? That mask is a myth, a story for children. I built my wealth with my hands, not some cursed artifact. You're stirring trouble, Adaez, and I won't have it ruining this family. Then why are you so afraid?" Adaez shot back, rubbing her arm where his fingers had dug in. "I saw it in your eyes last night when I mentioned Mama Agu. Chidi heard you at the mill, praying, begging something to leave you alone. What did you try to give back, Papa? What are you hiding?" Obi's face twisted, a storm of emotions flashing across it, anger, guilt, a raw, naked fear that stripped away his bravado. For a moment, he seemed on the verge of striking her, his hand twitching at his side. But then his shoulders slumped, and he looked away, his voice dropping to a ragged whisper. "You don't understand what you're meddling with, Adaez. I was young, desperate, my father dead, my mother starving. I took the mask. Yes, it gave me everything: wealth, power, a future. But when I tried to return it, years later she wouldn't take it. The ground opened, shadows grabbed me, choked me. I ran, hid it, thought she'd forget. But she never did. The dreams started, then the deaths. I thought I could outlast her, but..." Adaez's heart sank, pity warring with the fury boiling in her chest. "Where's it now, Papa? Tell me." Obi shook his head, his eyes haunted. "Leave it alone, Adaez. It's too late. She'll kill me if I go near that shrine again." "It's not too late," Adaez said, stepping closer, her voice softening but firm. "If you won't tell me, I'll find it myself. I won't let more people die because of your secrets." She turned and walked away, Chidi at her side, the festival resuming behind them with a hesitant drumbeat. Obi called after her, his voice hoarse and broken, but she didn't look back. From the shadows, Okoye watched, his smile widening as he murmured to another of his men, his gaze fixed on the Nwankwo siblings disappearing into the crowd. Adaez and Chidi slipped back into the compound as the sun dipped low, painting the hills of Umoeze in streaks of amber and violet. The festival's drums still echoed faintly from the square, a heartbeat pulsing through the village. But inside the mud-brick walls, the air was thick with silence, and the lingering scent of egusi soup gone cold. Ngozi sat on a stool, her hands idle in her lap, her eyes red and distant, as if she'd been staring into a past she couldn't unsee. She looked up as her children entered, her voice trembling. "Did you find him? Did he tell you?" Adaez nodded, her wrapper rustling as she sank onto the mat beside her mother. "He admitted it, Mama. He stole the mask, Ma'agu's mask, 40 years ago. It's why he's rich, why we have all this. But he tried to return it once and she wouldn't let him. He's terrified, says she'll kill him. if he goes near the shrine again. Chidi crouched beside them, his flute tucked into his waistband, his voice urgent. He's hiding it somewhere, Mama. He wouldn't say where, but he knows the deaths are because of him. We need to find it tonight. Ngozie's hands clenched her wrapper, her knuckles whitening. If this is true, if Obi brought this curse on us. She trailed off, tears spilling anew, then straightened, her voice hardening with a mother's resolve. Search his room. He keeps things in that old trunk, the one he never lets me touch. If the mask's anywhere, it's there. Edayez met her mother's gaze, a flicker of gratitude warming her chest. Thank you, Mama. Stay here, we'll handle it. The siblings waited until the night deepened, the compound settling into a stillness broken only by the chirping of crickets and the occasional bark of a dog in the distance. Obi had returned from the festival, his steps heavy with exhaustion and palm wine, and retreated to his room without a word. Now, the faint sound of his snores drifted through the wooden door, a fragile shield against their mission. Adayez lit a lantern, its flame casting a soft glow as they crept into the small back room, the air thick with the sour tang of tobacco and the musk of old cloth. Obi's room was sparse, a narrow bed with a threadbare blanket, a stool piled with folded egbeda, and a metal trunk in the corner, its surface rusted but sturdy, its lock glinting dully in the light. Chidi knelt beside it, pulling a hairpin from Adayez's wrapper with a nervous glance at the door. I've seen the market boys pick locks like this, he whispered, his fingers trembling as he worked the pin into the keyhole. Adayez held the lantern higher, her breath shallow, every creak of the house amplifying her fear of discovery. After tense minutes, the lock clicked, a sharp sound that made them both freeze, listening for any stir from Obi. Silence held, and Adayez lifted the lid, the hinges groaning softly. Inside lay a jumble of memories, yellowed photographs of a younger Obi with a gaunt-faced woman Adayez recognized as her late grandmother, a bundle of Nera notes tied with twine, a faded agbada embroidered with threads that had once been gold. But at the bottom, wrapped in a piece of red cloth stained with age, was the bronze mask. Adayez lifted it with trembling hands, its weight heavier than she'd expected, its surface etched with intricate patterns, spirals, and lines that seemed to shift in the lantern's flicker. The hollow eyes stared up at her, unblinking, and a cold energy pulsed from it, prickling her skin and sinking into her bones. She felt it power, ancient and angry, a presence that whispered of justice and retribution. This is it, she breathed, her voice barely audible. Ma'agu's mask. Chidi stared, his eyes wide, his hand hovering as if afraid to touch it. It's beautiful, but wrong, like it's alive, watching us. Before Adayez could respond, a shadow loomed in the doorway, broad and menacing. Obi stood there, his agbada rumpled, his face a storm of fury and fear, a machete gleaming in his hand. "What are you doing?" he roared, his voice shaking the walls, his eyes darting to the mask in Adayez's grasp. She clutched it to her chest, standing firm despite the terror clawing at her throat. "I found it, Papa. You lied to me, to all of us." "Why?" Obi's gaze locked onto the mask, and for a moment he looked like a trapped animal, his scar twitching as his breath came in ragged bursts. "Put it down, Adayez," he said, his voice low and dangerous, the machete trembling in his grip. "You don't know what you're holding, what it can do." "I know enough," Adayez replied, stepping back, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "Mama Nkechi told me everything. You stole this from the shrine, used it to get rich, and now Umaragu's killing people because of you. We're returning it tonight." Obi lunged, the machete flashing, but Chidi threw himself between them, shoving his father back with a strength born of desperation. "Papa, stop," Chidi shouted, his voice cracking. "Adayez is right, we can't keep this. It's killing people." Obi staggered, the machete clattering to the floor as he caught himself against the wall. His face crumpled, and he sank to his knees, his hands covering his eyes as sobs racked his broad frame. "I didn't mean for this," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I was young, starving, my father gone, my mother dying. I heard the stories the mask could bring wealth. I took it, buried it under our hut, prayed to Mama Agwu for a chance. The next day, a trader paid me 10 times what my oil was worth. I built the mill, the house, everything. But the dreams came Mama Agwu demanding it back. I tried. As I went to the shrine years later after you were born. I begged her to take it, but the ground split. Shadows grabbed me, choked me. I ran, hid it here. I thought if I ignored her, she'd leave me alone. Then the deaths started. Mama UCHE, Cain, Namdi, and I knew she'd come for us next." Ades knelt beside him, her anger melting into a painful pity as tears streaked his scarred face. "Why didn't you tell us, Papa? We could have helped." "I was ashamed," Obi said, his voice a ragged whisper, "and afraid she'll kill me if I go back. And there's more. Chief Okoye knows. He's wanted the mask for years, threatened me, watched me. If he finds out you have it, he'll come for you." Adaye's stomach tightened, Mama Nkechi's warning ringing in her ears. "Then we move fast," she said, wrapping the mask in its cloth and tucking it into her wrapper. "Papa, you stole it. You need to come with us. Mama Agwu won't end this unless you face her." Obi shook his head, his eyes wild with terror. "I can't. She'll take my life. If you don't, she'll take ours." Adea snapped, her patience fraying. "For once, Papa, do the right thing." Obi looked at her, then at Chidi, who stood resolute beside her, and finally nodded, his voice barely audible. "All right, I'll go." The night was thick with humidity, the air heavy with the promise of rain as Adaes, Chidi, and Obi stepped into the darkness. The lantern cast a feeble glow, its flame flickering as they moved through the village, the festival's echoes fading into a haunting silence. The baobab loomed ahead, its branches twisting like skeletal fingers against the moonlit sky. An owl perched high, its red eyes glinting as it watched their approach. The wind carried a low hum, a whisper of voices that made Adaezi's skin prickle. The cowrie shell in her wrapper seemed to pulse faintly, a guide in the growing shadows. They were halfway to the shrine when shouts erupted behind them. "There!" a voice bellowed, deep and commanding. Adaez turned to see Chief Okoye striding from the shadows, flanked by 4 men, hard-faced figures with machetes and clubs, their eyes glinting with greed. Okoye was a mountain of a man, his gold-threaded agbada shimmering, a wide-brimmed hat casting his face in shadow, save for the cruel curve of his smile. He'd been waiting, his spies tracking Obi's every move, and now he'd struck. "Obi's brats have my prize," Okoye said, his voice dripping with malice as he drew a pistol from his robe, its barrel catching the moonlight. "Hand it over, and I might let one of you live." Chidi stepped forward, his fists clenched, his voice trembling but defiant. "You'll have to kill us first." Okoye laughed, a cold, hollow sound that echoed through the night. "Brave words, boy. Foolish." He nodded to his men, who advanced, weapons raised, their boots thudding on the earth. Adaez's mind raced, the mask's weight pressing against her waist. She couldn't let Okoye take it if he did. The curse would never end, and Mama Agwu's wrath would consume them all. "Run!" she shouted, grabbing Chidi's arm and pulling him toward the shrine. Obi stumbling behind them. The men gave chase, their shouts ringing out, but the night itself seemed to rise against them. Roots burst from the ground, tripping one man, his machete flying. Branches lashed down, striking another across the face, drawing a howl of pain. Okoye fired, the shot cracking through the air, the bullet grazing a palm tree as Adaez ducked, her heart hammering. "Keep going," she yelled, the shrine's clearing coming into view, the painted stones glowing faintly in the lantern's light. They burst into the open, and Adaez knelt, unwrapping the mask and placing it before the shrine. its bronze surface gleaming like a dark mirror. "Ma-agwu," she whispered, her voice shaking. "We return what was stolen. Please, spare us, spare Umwezi." The lantern flared violently, then dimmed, a cold wind sweeping through the clearing. The baobab groaned, its branches creaking as if alive, and a shadow formed beneath it, a woman in a white wrapper, her eyes burning like twin fires. Ma-agwu towered over them, her presence suffocating, her voice a hiss that shook the earth. "The debt is unpaid, child of the thief. The mask was defiled, its power twisted for greed. Blood has spilled, and blood must answer." Adai's stomach dropped, her hands trembling as she held the mask aloft. "We've brought it back. Isn't that enough?" Ma-agwu stepped closer, her gaze searing. "The thief must atone, or you will." Before Adaiz could respond, Okoye burst into the clearing, his men limping behind, blood streaking their faces from the forest's assault. He raised his pistol, his voice a snarl. "The mask is mine, goddess or not." Obi shoved Adaiz aside, stepping forward, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "No, Okoye, it's Ma-agwu's, and I'm here to return it." He turned to the goddess, falling to his knees, the mask in his outstretched hands. "I stole from you, great Ma-agwu. I defiled your gift for my own gain. I beg your forgiveness. Take my life if you must, but spare my family, spare this village." Okoye sneered, his finger tightening on the trigger. "You'll die first, Obi." But before he could fire, Ma-agwu's eyes flared, and the ground trembled. Lightning split the sky, striking the earth between Okoye and the Nwankwo, a blinding flash that sent his men scrambling in terror. Roots surged from the soil, thick and gnarled, wrapping Okoye's legs, his arms, dragging him down as he screamed, "No! The power's mine." The earth swallowed him, his cries fading into a chilling silence, the pistol falling useless to the ground. Ma-agwu's hand passed through Obi, and he gasped, clutching his chest as the mask glowed with a fierce light before crumbling to ash in his hands. The storm ceased, the air warming, the owl taking flight with a final screech. "The debt is paid," Ma-agwu intoned, her voice a low rumble as her form faded. "Justice lives, but the thief bears its mark." Obi collapsed, his breathing shallow, his skin ashen. Adaiz and Chidi rushed to him, Ngozi bursting from the shadows she'd followed, unable to stay behind her arms wrapping around her family as tears streamed down her face. Obi lived, but the goddess's touch had weakened him, a price for his greed. The next morning, Umwezi woke to a quiet peace, the baobab standing serene, its branches no longer menacing. The shrine was adorned with fresh offerings, kola nuts, palm wine, yams from villagers grateful for the curse's end. Word of the night spread Obi's confession, Okoye's fate, Ma-agwu's mercy and judgment. The elders declared a day of cleansing, drums and dances honoring the goddess echoing through the hills. Obi, frail and humbled, sold the mill, distributing the wealth to the families of Mama Uche, Kene, and Nnamdi, a penance for the lives lost to his ambition. He kept only enough for a simple life, his strength sapped, but his spirit lighter. Adaiz and Chidi rebuilt the shrine, laying stones and planting flowers. Their bond with their father forged anew in the fire of that night. Okoye's men fled, his compound abandoned, whispers claiming Ma-agwu had claimed him in the forest. His absence lifted a shadow from Umwezi, a testament to justice served. As the sun set, Adaiz stood beneath the baobab, her wrapper fluttering in the breeze, the cowrie shell warm in her hand. Chidi joined her, his flute singing a soft melody that drifted over the village. "We did it," he said, pride and relief in his voice. "We did," Adaiz replied, smiling, her eyes tracing the tree's silhouette. "And we'll never forget the cost." The baobab's shadows stretched long, a reminder of the past and a promise of a future reclaimed.